Today on the Coach White Podcast, we have a very special guest. He has an extensive career of success when it comes to playing the game of basketball, which has led to him finding all that same success when it comes to the game of basketball as a coach. He's currently the head basketball coach at Grace College, where he has been 3-time Crossroads League Coach of the Year, 2-time NCCAA National Coach of the Year, NAIA National Coach of the Year, as well as a Don Meyer NAIA Coach of the Year. So many other things to list here, but he's led his team to 131-39 record. He's coached 8 All-Americans. He's had his longest win streak being 24 in a row. His NAIA tournament record is 9-3. He's also been to 5 national tournaments, and he's reached as high as number 1 in the rankings, and that has been for over a year consistent. I don't need to get into too much more. He has a whole list of things. You can go check out his bio. It's incredible. And I couldn't be more happy to have him on our show today. Today we welcome Coach Scott Moore to the Coach of What podcast.
With the world of coaching evolving and the carousel always changing, we're going to sit down with some coaches and we're going to figure out what they coach, how they coach, and most importantly, why they got into this profession. My name is Kason Wilkinson, and I am your host of the Coach's Why podcast.
That's a great question.
That was my Coach's Why.
Welcome back to another Coach of What podcast. We have a very special guest in the house today, Coach Scott Moore, head basketball coach, men's basketball coach at Grace College. Coach, how are you doing today?
Jason, thanks, buddy. I'm doing well.
Good, man. How's the little one? I know that's what we had to delay a little bit last time, right?
Yeah.
Was because you were in the hospital. So how's the little one doing?
He's doing great. We just added our second baby boy to the family, and my oldest son is 4.5. And so, yeah, the last time we tried to do this, we were a little tied up, but yeah, everything went well. He's home. Mama's good. And yeah, Coach Moore is blessed, man. It's, I told people coming into this season, cause we had such a spectacular year last year. And some people like, up in the air, you're going to be good again, or you're not. And I said, hey, look, if we're really good, come January time, I'm going to be even more pumped. If we suck, then that's okay, because come January, I'm going to be happy. So the good thing is we're the first one, so we're really good, and I've got a new baby boy.
Yeah, it's a double win. So that's cool, man. Heck yeah, that's awesome. Well, congratulations on that, and congratulations on a successful year so far. And so before we get into your year, before we get into all the fun coaching stuff, I want you to kind of let myself know, and everybody who's listening, a little bit about you. So kind of like where you grew up, and then when you got involved in the sport, I guess all sports, but in particular basketball, since that is obviously your the sport you're coaching right now.
Yeah, well, I'm an Indiana guy. Actually, I grew up right down the road, and if you know anything about Indiana, especially in the 90s, it was chaos here. So you had the Hoosiers and Bob Knight, and
Absolutely.
Obviously that was a big deal. And, honestly, Casey, I come from an area where it's basketball is a hotbed, and it's kind of what you did. And, Friday nights, Saturday nights, when you talk about high school basketball in Indiana, you're talking about, my high school gym, we were a small 4A, which is the highest level. So we were one of the smaller, highest level ones. But,
Okay.
We had a small gym, and our gym sat over 3,000 people. And When you tell people that, like, when people are from, Montana or Iowa, some places are like, man, 3,000. But, I coach in the Winona Lake area, which we have a school here named Warsaw. My older brother actually is the high school basketball coach here. And, just that gym alone, I think seats 5,600.
Wow, that's impressive.
So the reason I tell you
impressive.
that is, because when we grew up, my twin brother and I, Marcus, that was everything is Indiana high school basketball, and then going to Indiana and playing for Bob Knight and the Hoosiers. So that was the dream and aspirations. But I have 3 siblings. One's a twin. I have an older brother, and then I have an older sister who's 10 years older. My folks were just regular folks. My mom was a school teacher on the business side for 30 plus years. My dad worked in some public relations and some manager stuff with the phone company in town. And I found a love early on. And really, my brother is 6 years older than Marcus and I. So it was kind of one of those, we were the little dudes that got beat up all the time that just wanted to, hang around. And so early on, that's what we did. We just followed him around, and any chance we had to get in with him and his friends and just try to compete was anything we just wanted. So I played every sport you could imagine, but I would say really about middle school started to favor more like, okay, this is probably the direction we're going. And was very, very grateful to play on an unbelievable high school team. We were the second ranked team in the entire state of Indiana, which obviously is a huge deal. And I got to play in a state finals my senior year and actually happened to
nice.
lose to guys that people know really well, Greg Oden for
Oh
the
yeah.
old Ohio State, and Mike
Yep.
Conley, who obviously is
Yeah.
still playing, which is impressive.
Absolutely. Yeah. He is
Um, yeah,
the lefty.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think he's year 15 or something NBA or maybe more.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, so we lost to them in the state finals. Actually had an opportunity to continue my career. Came to Grace.
Okay.
Played here for 4 years from '04 to '08. And then both Marcus and I had an opportunity. We played overseas a couple years, traveled over to China, and then we ended our career in Australia. Um, After that, again, it was kind of like anyone else, right? I'm 24, 25 years old, trying to figure out what to do with life. And my older brother just happened to get a coaching job in Ohio, a small college in Ohio. And I thought, man, I don't really want to know what I want to do, but I love being around hoops.
Yeah.
And I kind of like the idea of building my own team. And
Absolutely.
so ended up taking an assistant job with him. I was there for 3 years, moved back to Indiana, got to be back at Grace with my head coach and back at my alma mater. And then 7 years quickly go by, and next thing I know, I'm sitting in an office and they're naming me the next head coach. So we are currently in year 6.
Nice.
It's been an absolute blessing. I hit the jackpot. I think very rarely is your first job, what you would kind of consider a dream job. And I just had an amazing opportunity, not only to learn from my mentor and one of my best friends, Coach Kessler, who was at Grace for 44 years, but to be named the head coach of a place that you love and admire and believe in was an absolute honor for me. So, yeah, 6 years later, here we are. We're raising a family. My whole family's in town. My brother's the high school coach, like I said,
Yeah.
right across town. So it's pretty special.
No, it sounds like it is, man. Being able to go back to almost like the roots in a sense, right? And have more than just yourself involved with that. So I'm sure that's, like you said, maybe not a dream job for a lot of people, but just that comfort maybe is more of the dream maybe than the paycheck and all that stuff's great, but sometimes obviously we all know we're not doing this for pay, so I can definitely understand and respect that that you're happy there. So that's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that and letting us know where you're from. I have a few questions I'm going to dive into for sure about playing overseas, and you just mentioned that you're 6 years into this, and so I'm going to ask you this. So what's some of the biggest changes, maybe like evolution wise and I know you said you've been coaching for a while in general, so maybe you can answer it with including that time frame as well. But in general, what's some of the biggest changes that you've seen when it comes to like the evolution of maybe the sport of basketball that you've seen, or maybe just like how the coaching evolves with that time frame as well, and then kind of the second part to that is maybe some challenges as well that you've had to endure in going from assistant to head, and then over the last 6 years as well.
Yeah, I think like anything else, as society changes, right? Everything within society changes. That means
Absolutely.
Education is different. That means just the normal. When I grew up, I grew up in the era where it was too expensive to answer and send a text message, so you didn't text because it was
absolutely
10 cents every time you opened one and 10 cents every time you sent one, and pretty soon mom would be upset because you racked up a $48 bill in a weekend.
yeah.
So yeah, it's just I'm kind of on that edge, the old school millennial, but I would say in the 16 years, I think the roots of what we do and why we do it haven't changed. I think there's a little bit more challenges because there's just a lot going on, right? And
Yeah.
I think kids are pulled more in different directions. And so I would say the biggest thing I've learned in the 16 years overall, and what's been different about my involvement as a coach, has been like anything else. When I got into it, it's like, okay, I was a successful player. This is going to be easy. I'll just, get in and teach people what I know, and boom, we'll win a bunch of games and life will be easy. And
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you how wrong that was. My first couple of years with my older brother at Mount Vernon, it's like, man, I stink at this. Like,
Right.
I'm not a good coach. In fact, after that third year, I was ready to get out of it because I thought I don't have the ability to share knowledge about what I did as a player and get a kid or a young man to be able to do the same thing. I just wasn't successful. So I had to change my thinking a little bit. And now in year 6 as a head coach, more than anything, and especially where I'm at, is the X's and O's. You have to have a bucket of skill set and knowledge.
Yeah.
Knowledge content is obviously a big deal, whatever you do, but the relationship side of things, and more than ever, a young man has to be able to come into my office and know that, like, I believe in them,
Mm-hmm.
and believe in them in such a way that, like, Kason, they may not even be a rotation player. Like, they may be the end of a bench guy.
Yeah.
But if I don't have a relationship with that kid, it's not going to go the way you want it to. And even if you do, it still could be bumpy here or there. But that's what I really tried to do the last couple of years, is kind of more dive in the mind of a 20-year-old, which is a dangerous place.
Yeah, fair. Absolutely.
But really, I want to be someone who, I never wanted a person's ability or their play to change the way I felt about them. And I'll be transparent with you. 16 years ago, 15 years ago, that wasn't the case. It's like, look, this kid's good. He's going to help me win more games, which helps my name, which helps me get what I want. And that's evolved to, like, look, this isn't even about me. This is about me creating an opportunity for a young man to flourish. And those ultimate moments of getting a text message or getting a letter and hearing from the kids who go through your program, who invite you to their wedding or share their newborns, right? Or just call you to tell you that they love you.
Mm-hmm.
The feeling that gives you, it's amazing how much more that trumps than anything that I did in the past that was meant for me.
Yeah.
It's so, again, I'm learning, like I said, 16 years of doing this. It's funny. I realize how much I don't know, and it's an ongoing process. But I think the long answer would be the relationship side of things have changed drastically, how important that is today.
I think that just in general, as a coach, if you want your program to, and this is obviously a question towards the end, but like the culture and some of the things that are relatively important, right, to the outside, is how well can my team win from the fan side of things. That relationship that you build with them helps kind of create that bond to where hopefully long-term wise you find that success. But I do agree, and I'm sure you said it, and I've heard other coaches say it, that it's almost more fulfilling, and I would agree, and I'm glad that you mentioned it, that when you help create good fathers or good husbands or good just people in general, that's ultimately way more impactful and better than if you win or if you whether you win or lose. So I love that the relationships is an important piece. And so whenever it comes to like your evolution of, as you said, some of the, I guess just from where you were to now, how did you get kind of over the idea that, as you mentioned, like, oh, this was, I get this kid in, he's going to help me right now so I can get to that next point or whatever your goal was, or that mental state. Like, how did you kind of overcome that to understand that it's more about the kids? Was it just time that you've been there, or was there a conversation? I mean, what was it that kind of flipped that mentality from me to the kids?
Like anything else, experiences help shape, right? Who you hang around with and the experience that you have will help shape a lot of the decisions you make and the knowledge that you have. So I think time had something to do with it. I do remember a quote when I took over for Coach Kessler here 6 years ago. One of my favorite things that's always stuck with me. He said, I only have two words of advice, and I'd never heard him say this, which was, you spent a lot of time with this guy over the course of, my brother played for him, so I was here from 98 to 02, and then with him from 04 to 08, and then I coached with him for 7 years. So, like, He really truly is a second father figure for me and my brothers. But he said, number one, you need to build this thing exactly the way you want to, not what I want, not that this person would do, but like literally build it how you want it to look like. And number two, I would recruit kids that you could see yourself playing with. And I never thought about that. I was a point guard for Coach Kessler, and it really changed my thought process of the recruiting piece of I started to ask myself, okay, this kid that I'm looking at and recruiting, would I want him on my team if I was the point guard? And it's amazing how just that little verbiage changed my thought process. I stopped looking so much at rankings and what people were saying about other kids. And I thought there was value in that. But I would always go back to, okay, would I want to play with this kid? I don't care if they're ranked 150th in the state of Indiana. Like, if he's good and he makes our team better and I value certain things, if he brings those, then I got to get this kid on my team.
Right.
And same point, there are some high dollar, very highly ranked kids that I'd look at and say, you know what? That would be a bad fit for us. Let's don't recruit him.
Right.
So I would say early on in the coaching, my first year, that was kind of the idea. And then over time, it's kind of you tweak what you learn, right? I think one big thing that I've learned here at, age 39 and year 16 overall is I have two wonderful associate head coaches, and, both of them are honestly, they're both head coaches. They could be head coaches right now in the country with really good jobs. They're very intelligent. I know that the best thing for our program was to maybe take a step back and let these guys carry on a little bit more responsibility and some very not the scheduling part, not the hey, get the meals after the games, but really gave them responsibility of you're in control of this, and this has effect on winning and losing, right? And as a head coach, it's hard because your name's on the door.
Absolutely, yeah.
And when you win or you lose, it comes to you. And when you make decision, it comes to you. So that's been really good for me because, I was sick early on this season. I had a health episode and actually missed 9 games.
Oh, wow.
Quite a bit. 5.5, 6 weeks of the season. And so I think it was just God kind of, there was a purpose in that where we kind of started to make that transition of giving them more responsibility. And then the next thing you know, I'm in the hospital, and now they don't have a choice but coach our team.
Yeah.
And so our team was incredible during that stretch. I think the boys went 8-1, and you're talking about playing in the Crossroads League, which is arguably the toughest conference in NAIA across the country. And so again, that's one thing that not easy to do, but to evolve as a leader and to evolve as a head coach, that was vital for our success. So I'm glad we did it.
Yeah, and that's kind of like you mentioned God in there, right? Like kind of a natural way of delegating, and that's something I struggle with, or should say struggled with, and had to learn is how to delegate properly and know when to delegate too, right? Like can't overload too early, can't go too much, to whatever the case is, however you're looking at it. Understanding that delegation is important, and to find success, you have to have good coaches around you. And I've mentioned this before. I don't know if I've said it to first or somebody said it to me. I can't remember, but understanding like maybe some of your strengths and some of your weaknesses, to where you have some assistants who can kind of pick up where you're lacking, right? And kind of vice versa, and play off each other is huge in building a program in general, but also to find success.
Yeah. You want to have a foundation put in place. Like, you want to know exactly who you are and what you want to strive for. And I think as your assistants, that's really important for them to understand that. And number one, I have a staff where, our foundation is built where they're on board of, hey, this is our purpose, right? This is what we're trying to do. And believe it or not, our purpose is not winning basketball games. That's our goal. We want to win, but there's a higher purpose here. So because we have that, now it's what you said, it's the little self-evaluation. It's identifying, hey, what am I really good at? And then what are these guys better than me at? And do I have enough where I can take a step back and say, okay, I'm going to focus my attention here and let you guys take us to another level in this area. And I'm telling you, man, I know you know this, but there are coaches right now at a very high level that can't do that. They can't do it. And
Yeah.
it costs them. And it's funny because in their mind, they want to win more than anybody, but yet they can't get out of their own way to create what they actually want, which is winning more games. So
Yeah. And, it's like the coaching tree, right? I just had this conversation with a high school coach, and how he's like, I would love to have a coaching tree kind of develop from me, right? On like to where kids, whatever the case is, right, develop. And it's interesting because, if you're talking, let's just talk like NFL, right? Like Bill Belichick's had so many coaches go be head coaches, and Nick Saban's had the same thing. And you've had some coaches in the college ranks obviously do that. But the reason why some of those coaches get to that point, as we say, is because of the fact that you are able to have a coaching staff, whatever the case is, 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 10 year, and helps you get there. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that there's some coaches that can't get out of their own way, I guess.
yeah,
To
there's a
actually
lot
get
of
over
them.
it.
I mean, honestly, there's a lot of them in a lot of different sports. And again, there's just, and again, I can't speak, but it's been good for me.
Yeah, of
It's
course.
also it's been healthy for me in the sec that, like, I don't feel like I'm juggling as much. And I think that's also been great. My two assistants do not have children, and I do. And so that allows me to, even they just the other week, we sat in the office, we were talking about recruiting, and I was getting ready to go out on a Friday night, and like both of them looked at me and they're just like, my assistants are telling me to go home and be with my wife and newborn. And it's just like, what assistants would do that? Where it's like,
Absolutely.
hey, you would tell us the same thing. Like, it's not healthy for, like, just go be with your family. And that just means a lot to me, knowing that you have guys around you that, one, love you, and that also are looking in your best interests. And hopefully they feel the same way.
Absolutely. And so that kind of leads me to this question here, because it sounds like, kind of the relationship that you've built that you have with your current coaches, whether hopefully one day they'll say that you were an impact on their life. So I'm going to kind of ask you about your coaches who impacted you. So was there ever a coach, and this could be plural, so more than one, but was there ever a coach or coaches who made an impact on your life? Who were they and why?
In different aspects of coaching, I think that's the best part, is what we get to do is we get to take whatever we want, the good, bad, whatever we view, and create our own style.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're never really, a high percentage. You should never really be a high percentage of any other coach. You should have bits and pieces, 20% here, 20% there.
Right.
My high school coach was a phenomenal just tactician of the game. He was, at a young age, I learned to be button up, learned to, like, details mattered, learn how to carry yourself, the in-game adjustments, things like that, like just a high cerebral. So I learned that early on. My college coach, everything that's probably more important, I took from him. The relationship pieces, what does it look like to be a husband? And again, that's a hard conversation as a 20-year-old, because you're not close to being a husband in this case.
Yeah.
And, what does it look like to be a father? What does it look like to be a man of God? What does it look like to be a professional? And so I took a ton away from Coach Kessler. And then a lot of it, my brother we're very different. My older brother is 6 years older, but his ability to process the game at such a fast speed is always fascinating to me, because you talk about where do you want to improve? Well, I always want to have my kids prepared. I always want to, go into a game where I've given them the best opportunity to do whatever they need to do to come across with a win. But,
Right.
I watch him and I sit there and go, man, his ability to read the game and be 5 minutes ahead and just process all these different outcomes that could be, and then have different answers for all those possible outcomes. And then, like, he's the only guy I know who could call a 30-second timeout, make something completely up just because it's in his bank,
Yeah.
right? Have his 16-year-old kids understand it in 20 seconds, and then be able to go out and then obviously do that at a high level and get the result they're looking for. Like, yeah, people don't understand how hard that is to do. It's hard enough to call timeout and do something that you've practiced all year, let
Absolutely.
alone
Yeah.
just like okay, this defense is doing this. We're up to this situation. That guy's in foul trouble. Like, let's do this, right? So, I've taken a lot from him. I've also, this kind of sounds a different answer than probably you get from most, but I kind of view my mom as a coach.
I have heard I've heard dads, but you're the first person to say mom, I think. So
She's
that's
not
fair. Okay.
she's not a coach. But to me, I got asked a question a long time ago. What do you coach? And my answer was basketball. And the person who asked me the question said, "No, you're wrong." And I'm like, "No, I coach basketball. Like that's what." And he's like, "No, you don't. You coach people. You teach basketball, but you coach people." And what's that's done for me as a professional has made me realize like we all are coaches. And it doesn't matter if you're actually a basketball coach or if you're a teacher or if you are a CEO. Anytime you're in leadership, you're coaching people. And my mom was so good at what I hopefully that I'm decent at, which is the coaching the heart piece and understanding and really, really diving deep to, hey, I want you to know, like, my man, I've got your back.
Yeah.
And I may yell at you and I may discipline you and I may get on you for doing this, this, or this, but in 2 seconds it's over and you can be mad at me, but you're going to get over because we love each other and you know where it's coming from. Like my mom kind of taught me that, and my mom's not a coach. So yeah, those are the 4 pieces that kind of built. And obviously I've taken things from certain people like a Matt Painter or, I like Nate Oates stuff and just X's and O's in here or there, program development or design, right? You always are stealing stuff, but from a actual, hey, this is my philosophy, that's probably the people I've taken from.
I like that. Yeah, I was going to ask you what's one thing that you've taken. One of my newer favorite questions I like to ask is what's one thing that you have taken maybe from like the mental or social side from any of the people you just mentioned, as well as a X's and O's side of things, and what have you implemented into your program. But it sounds like you've kind of implemented, as you said, you've kind of taken a lot of different things and you've kind of put it into whatever it might be, the X's and O's, the social side, the mental side, the relationship side. So it sounds like you've kind of used all of or multiple different things. Is there anything that stands out to you that you can say, I love that I was able, like, is there one thing that stands out that I took this from somebody and this is my favorite thing to use or implement or that I'm so thankful that I was able to learn, I guess, if that makes sense?
Yeah, there's probably too many to name, but I will say one thing I'm working on, and I've actually it's obviously, God's trying to teach me something because it's come up here the last probably 16, 18 months regularly, whether it's reading or it's hearing someone talking about it. Like I can talk, right? So I can sit down and I can sit one of my kids down and I find myself like I can dominate a conversation. Just because I'm good with words.
Yeah.
But I found myself just keep hearing like there's power in silence and there's power in getting your point across with less words. And it's obviously, as you can tell, it's an ongoing problem I have, but that's one thing I've really been trying really hard this last year of, okay, a young man comes and sits on my couch and we're going to have normal. And I get to meet with my boys constantly. It's a big thing about what we do here is just talk life, right? Well, I need to ask more questions and I need to listen more. Like I'm going to tell them what I think and they know that, but man, to listen, like you can understand a story a lot more if you know where a kid's coming from. Where let's say a kid's not playing well. I have him in my office and I'm watching film and I'm literally telling him like, okay, here's what you're doing wrong. This is what's going on. Here's why you're not playing much. Here's this, 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 this. But if I just start with the conversation like, hey, man, like, how are you doing? Like, what's going on? Because obviously some things like you're not playing really well, but is there a reason? Like, and let's dive into that. And just a simple question like that. And the next thing you know, they're talking for 30 minutes and they walk out of here and you go, man, I would have never known. I would have just continued to coach
Yeah.
in a way that, well, he's just not playing well. So like, I'll make my decisions based on that. But like, man, I can help him in this situation because now I know what's going on. Like his grandmother's struggling and they're really close, and it's
Yep.
causing him to have late nights and conversations. And which is why he's not sleeping. And it's like, okay, like now I can tackle this, right? Whereas
Right.
before it's, well, I'm
Yeah,
just
you're
going to
just
tell
not
you what I
playing.
think.
Yeah, you're just not
Yeah,
playing
and I'm
well.
going to tell you what
Yeah.
I think, and you're going to listen and then get out of my office. So,
Yep.
yep.
So do you think that, so like whenever some of those situations that you're mentioning about these, like in that instance about like his grandma or whatever, and I know there's so many different variables from outside sources that can affect a college kid, right? Whatever the case is. But let's just go back to that grandma situation. And you said that you can kind of help coach them through it. What kind of patience do you have to like just understand that they'll find their flow again, right? It's like baseball if they're in a slump, right? You just have to kind of trust. Is it more of a trust the process type of thing? You'll find your shot, you'll find your dribble, you'll find whatever, or is there something that you feel like you have to do to kind of get their mind back on track, essentially, for them to kind of get to that production stage again?
Well, you always want to walk through the stuff with them. I think that's the biggest part is going back to they need to feel like you're on their side. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean, and this is the conversation where I think you got to have with, each individual, like we're trying to win games too. And we can't put that on the side of like, hey, if a kid's really struggling, this kid's doing, well, like I'm not going to just keep playing this kid just because I understand why he's not playing well.
Right.
Right. It's my job to walk through them with it, but it's also my job. I heard someone say this again. Your job is not to have 90% focus on one person. And as soon as you start having 90% focus on one person, you're not doing your job of coaching 15 guys. And let's be honest, like you're never going to be even percentages. It's always going to be a little bit scattered depending on personalities or this, that, things happen. But I always take that into account of, okay, let me walk with you. Let me help you. But also I got 14 other guys and I always have to do what I think and my assistants, what we think is best for the program. So it's kind of twofold there where I'm going to walk with you, but we're also, and I am going to give you confidence, right? Like, again, I shouldn't have control over your confidence. That's something that a person owns and they have to give it away. It's not something that I hear that all the time. Like, well, I lost my confidence because coach stole it or this from other people. I'm like, no, you did. Like, there's no person can steal your confidence. You got to give it away.
That's fair. I like
now
that.
they can't, a coach or a person can help build that, or they can help take it away, but I can't give you confidence or take confidence.
Yeah.
You
can build it. Yeah, you can build it or you can help. Yeah, you could chip away at it both ways. You can either add to it or chip away.
I can help you.
Correct.
Yeah. It goes back to being a believer, right? Like I can help lead someone to become a believer.
Right.
I'm not the reason they become a believer, right?
Absolutely.
I can only give opportunities to share and speak and just, I want them to look at me going, hey man, he's different. Like, he follows. So what's that about? Like, I'm not in decision of saving your soul. That's not what I was created for. I am in, the market of like, hey, this is what I believe in. Here's how it's changed my life. Let me give an opportunity for you to hear me so that I can help and you can make that decision. Right.
Yeah.
So it's something similar.
Yeah. So is that spirituality, right? I don't even know how to put that in. I don't even know the right word for that. But when it comes to the spiritual side of things, there we go. Is that something that you feel, which I know you said has helped you, but is that something that you kind of implement into your program? And have you seen, I've never asked this question, so I'm trying to figure out the best way to word it. But like when it comes to the spiritual side of things, and as you said, you're kind of opening up the opportunity for young men to kind of learn about it and maybe open their hearts and their mind to it. Have you seen kind of something when they do kind of buy into it a little bit, maybe their performance or maybe just their social or something about them on the court, off the court, and then maybe even a team side of things too, shift as well? Or are you seeing it more of just like you're seeing, some things that, as you mentioned, like with the grandma thing, let's just go back to that. They're a little bit more comfortable going through it, knowing that like they're giving their problems to somebody else and they're not having so much on their chest.
That's a tremendous question. I can tell you, and I think this is, again, a misunderstanding of a lot of people who are non-believers who view this as like, hey, once you become a follower of Christ, like now things are great and you're gonna be an MVP and start. And it's like, that's not how,
Absolutely
it's
not.
never meant to be that. That's not how, what it means is like you have an identity through something else, that two things can get you through tough times, and can also, you have a platform maybe to glorify. Like last year, we had a phenomenal team with, my starting center last year is now a starting center for Colorado in his
nice.
COVID year. And, I said this often because I don't know where someone said like, hey, you're winning today. Like keep praying for wins, keep praying for this, keep like that's, and I just kept thinking about it. And I was like, you know what? Like, honestly, I really don't think God cares if I win or lose. Like but however, I do think he cares how I win or lose.
Yeah, exactly.
And I
That's
would
fair.
tell the boys that constantly, like, the winning and the eyeballs, it gives you a platform to be able to do some really neat things and share your faith and now have people, start to ask questions maybe of like, man, they're really good at hoops and they're like, that's cool, right? Like that's really neat. But also like, hey, when you get beat, you say you call yourself this or that, like how do you react? And that's what I would get to my guys is like, hey, how you win and lose, I do think matters. It's going back to where we're at, Grace College. Like this is a faith-based school, and we are a faith-based program. And Case, and it's a part of what we do every day. And I can tell you this: if I win a national championship every year, and I don't see growth in my players from the spiritual side, then I'm doing something severely wrong. It's not working, and they need to get rid of me. And I'd be the only coach in America who'd get fired after winning national. But that's the truth. Like I was hired to, really do three things, and probably in this order is help these young men grow spiritually and let them know that like basketball is amazing, but the ball is going to stop dribbling sooner than later.
Yep.
And like your identity is not tied up into this. My identity as a coach is not tied up in winning and losing games. The second thing is like, you're coming to school for a reason. Like not many of you are going to play in the NBA, aka none of you. You could play overseas, but even then, like, you're lucky to have a 2-year overseas career and make money, let alone a long career. But when you retire, you're going to be 30 if you're lucky. Well, then what are you going to do next for the next 30 years? Right? So academically, like for them to grow academically and really thrive and to be able to be ready for whatever's next. And then that last piece is, of course, like, yeah, we want to win a lot of basketball games. Like, don't misunderstand. They're not just a bunch of good guys who come here and try really hard. No, we want to kick your teeth in. But that's also okay. Like that's, it's okay to be competitive the right way. And it's okay to be a believer and be competitive the right way. I think sometimes that gets misunderstood of, oh, well, they're mean, right? Like that's not, no. Or the other.
So sorry, guys, we had a little bit of a technical difficulty. We got kicked out of Zoom, but we are back here. So Coach, I know you were mentioning your three kind of pillars that you, that were expected of you essentially as you came coaching, right? So one was teaching faith, one was you were getting into, obviously wins and losses are important, but really it was who they are as people. And then what was your third one?
Well, just the academic side, right? Like again,
academics,
it's kind of the what's next, preparing them for, again, our career is going to end from a basketball standpoint sooner than later. And even those lucky ones are going to play until they're 25, 26, but there's a lot of life left after that, so preparing them academically just for that next level. And obviously winning basketball games. Like let's not put it, we want to hoop and we want to play well and we want to put a product on the floor that people are proud of and that want to root for. And I think, again, we were talking about sometimes that's misunderstood with, being competitive and being a believer. And that's what we try to do is there is a way to do things and compete at a high level, but also do it the right way. And so, yeah, we've been fortunate. We've been able to win a lot of games. But I think more than that, we've been able to win a lot of games the right way and whatever that really looks like. And I think that's what I'm most proud of here. And that's why I love coaching here, honestly, is because we're able to do that.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that there's a way to do things, or there's ways to be competitive, but doing it the right way. And I think that that's something that I feel like particularly as well in the sport of wrestling, right? Like it's a very grimy, very physical sport, and really a lot of the hammers and really a lot of the really good kids, when they step on that mat, they become like they become a different animal, right? They become, I'm gonna be in your face, I'm clubbing you hard, I'm trying to out physical you, right? And there are ways to people do it the wrong way. People are, there are kids who don't know how to do it the correct way. But as a team, we try to be to where people are scared to wrestle us because of the fact that we are so, aggressive or we're so, whatever the case is. And I've told multiple kids, like there's ways that, when they go out on the mat, especially beginning of the year, maybe when I was first around, they'd go out there and they were just like really, really on somebody. But they either crossed the line or became really, really close. And so I always made sure, I'm like, hey, we want to be that person or that team, but we have to be, there's a way to do that without losing respect or without doing it. There's a right way to doing it. And so, I think individually, but also as a team, you kind of have to be that way, I mean, maybe don't have to be, but I feel like all the best teams in any sport have that built in them. Maybe not the faith side, because I don't know if every school does that or every program, but just in general, that's something that you can do, and I think that you kind of have to have if you want to find success.
And even on the flip side of that, like, you'll hear some even believers talk about, like, can you really compete at a high level in a sport like wrestling or basketball or football and truly be a believer? And it's like, yeah, you do realize, like, even in 1 Corinthians, right? 1 Corinthians 9 says, like, people run the race, right? Do you not know that runners run the race? But what does it say? It says run in such a way that you can win the prize. And it's not talking about necessarily the trophy. It's talking about God's giving you a gift. Compete at the highest level that you can, and then bring him glory while you're doing it.
At the end,
and if you are a competitor and you're in wrestling and you're not giving everything you are, then you're doing yourself and you're doing a disservice. Like, again, but it also means, like, there's a way to do it right. You don't have to break rules and throw punches and say things, and just, like, sometimes your competitive juices will get flowing and you get out of character. You can get emotional, but also, like, again, there's great examples of that throughout history and the highest level, right? I think one person that comes to mind is one of my favorite basketball players. Odd, because I wasn't a post player, but David Robinson for the San Antonio Spurs.
Yeah, Big Rob.
I was just a big fan of the Admiral, and I was a history guy, so I kind of liked the idea of, okay, he went, into the Naval Academies, and just, he was a strong believer. And you watch him play, and man, he was a dog. He was a dog for the Spurs. But then you hear him talk, and it's all about giving glory. And I just thought that was really cool, because you're like, that's the first example I saw, being really young, of here's a guy who is not afraid to share his faith, but also, like, man, he's really good. He's one of the best 50 players that ever play this game, and you can be both.
I have some things I want to talk about, a little bit about the recruiting side, but I do think that, and this is a question, well, this isn't particular, but the whole faith thing is going to kind of roll into some recruiting questions. But as you mentioned, kind of on the contrary to that too, you don't see a lot of people, and maybe it's because they don't, it's media, right? So they don't, maybe not always show these things, but you always see when people give glory to God when they win, but you don't really see it as much when they lose. And that may be a media thing, because I'm not sitting in that conference in that conference room, right? But it also could be that when you're winning, you're at an all-time high, like, oh, thank God, can't believe this. And then on the other side of it, it's like, man, we just lost. What the heck, or whatever the case is, right? And they don't give that same glory because they had the same opportunity. They wouldn't be in that position if they didn't already have the opportunity, right? Wins and losses don't, as you mentioned, they don't dictate your faith, and they shouldn't, anyways, on how much you believe. So. I don't know. I just had to mention that because I feel like we don't see it on the other side of that too. We only see it on the winning side, at least as much. So
Yeah, and I think part of it too is just the microphone's always going to be put in the winners, right? Very rarely do you get the post game interview with the losing team, and I think you'd probably see that more with the right people. But it is hard. It's hard. You're right. It's easy. That's part of this profession too. It's easy to give glory when things are going well, but that's also life, right? It's also very easy
true.
to be a strong believer when things are good and financials are in shape and sun's coming out. But like, dude, life is hard, man. Like, the sky is gray, and money stuff happens, kid stuff, relationships, your car breaks down. Like, there's a lot of times even as a believer, you question, like, dude, what is going on? Why is this happening to me? My assistant right now, bless her heart, but his wife's it just had gone through a couple of years ago. Her mom had gotten cancer, and it was kind of a long fight, but she ended up passing away, I believe, at the age of, she was 48 or 49 years old. And then just this year, months ago, she lost her father suddenly, who had
Oh wow.
51. So here's a young lady who's a strong believer who lost her mom at 49, her dad at 51, 2 years later. And you're sitting there like, it's easy to sit there and go, why? Like,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't get it. I don't understand. And that's okay. I think that's okay. But that's also life, right? And I think that's
Absolutely.
where, if you are a believer, that's what you kind of have to hang tight on, is
I was
like,
gonna
look,
say,
we're not of this world, man.
yeah.
Yep.
That's when you have to get. That's when you should get closer, right? Or that's when you'd hope to get closer, and not run away. I think it's easy to do that. Trust me, I actually just started being, what's the right term? I actually just started going to church, truly
Congratulations.
about it. Thank you. Back in September, I believe, and I joined an all men's group this year, and so like I'm really trying to get closer to, obviously the higher power and everything like that, and so. The more I learn about that, the more it's easy for me to talk about, and so which is great. And so the reason why I bring that up is because like I'm about to get lost into talking about faith with you because I feel like I would learn a lot from it. So maybe I'll keep that for like a phone call whenever you're
For
free,
sure. Well, let me
because I
ask you a
think
quick question, if you don't
yeah,
mind.
of course, of course.
You just said you just started going. What brought you to that decision, back in September, to start that progress?
I feel like for a long time I kind of knew I needed to go. I just never really. I would say, I'm gonna go. I should go. I should do this. I should go. But I just never did, right? And I know my kid's mom actually she tried to get us to go to church back when we lived in Albuquerque, and I was always like I don't want to go, blah blah blah, and so it just I knew I needed to, and then actually I got invited to go to church with my kid's grandma, her stepmom, and so I went out to church with them, and I was like, I enjoyed it, right? And so they go to a different church, a little bit smaller, but I took that step, and that message there was like, all right, like, I don't know, I just needed to hear that message, and then as soon as I actually took that leap of going, I was like, all right, we got to make this a consistency. So I went to a church near me, a little bit bigger church, but I went there and it just kind of ever since I stepped into that church that first day, it was in a it was a crazy sermon series. It was like week 6 of 8 or week 7 of 8 in the sermon series, and that particular message really stuck out to me. And it was interesting because I had a coach who was actually my high school coach, who was one of my father figures growing up, or at least one of them. And he didn't live here, but he came back that weekend for something. He was an elder at the church, and it was like, I didn't know you were here, and it just kind of transpired into a conversation. My old baseball coach from youth was there, and he's a leader there, and like I spent probably an hour after talking to him. They introduced me to the pastor, and I was like, yeah, I got to do this. And so I've been consistent unless I haven't been there. But I guess long story was because I knew I needed to. I probably wouldn't have if I didn't get invited. So I say thank you to her for inviting me that day. But I knew I needed to. I just,
Yeah.
I kind of put up a void, and, to be honest with you too, like I kind of ran from it. I didn't grow up in the church. My family didn't do anything church wise. We believed, but we never did anything. And so I kind of had to put myself in those positions, and I knew where I was at as a father and as where I wanted to be in relationship with myself, but also everybody around me.
Yeah.
I just knew I needed to make myself better, and I couldn't. It was like the thing is, what do they say? The definition of crazy, expecting change after same results, whatever, right? And so I knew I needed to make that leap, and I very thankful. I've talked to, I've done job walkthroughs with people I haven't met before, and we end up saying, oh, I go to that church and blah blah blah, and so faith has really been something I'm trying to get myself back, or I shouldn't say back, really
You know what it
continuously
is,
too.
man? It's the Holy Spirit's working on you. That's what it is, brother.
Yeah, it is, and it's funny because the men's group started, and it's called Marksman, and they're talking about how like the 6 weeks always something happens, because when you make those decisions, right, you get into like a spiritual warfare, you get into things where like, because of where you are with your soul and your spiritual beliefs, you had that other side, right? Your enemy had kind of a lock on you, saying, oh, he's not going to do anything. And as soon as you make that leap, things start, that negative entity really starts to claw at you even more. Mm-hmm. And, I felt that for sure over that time. But there's also been a lot of great opportunities, at that time, had the opportunity to start this podcast again after I kind of let it go. Had some coaches that I was really good friends with from trying to get athletes out, college coaches that we built relationships with, like, you need to do it. I had a coach call me and say, hey, like, I would love for you to have the opportunity to come out here and maybe look to work out here, whatever the case is, right? Like, so many opportunities have came from it, but at the same time, I feel like I've gotten better as a person. So,
awesome.
Which is obviously the goal, right? No matter what there is. So, yeah, that was a long story, but that was the reason behind it. Was I needed to, but I got invited, and very thankful I actually took that leap for sure, because
awesome.
I needed it for sure. I think I needed it, and so I'm trying to get my boys go every weekend, either with me or with her, and we my boys are. I have 3 boys, and I know the ratio is really high when the dad takes them to church and involved. So that's important for me too, for them. So yeah, that's it for sure.
That's cool, man. That's a neat story. But maybe we can get on a phone call and dive into that a little bit more. I'd love to hear
Absolutely.
more.
Yeah, I'd love to, man. I definitely enjoy that conversation, and obviously I'm new, so I'd love to hear the word and hear it from another man. So I'd love to. We'll put that on the schedule for one day too.
Okay. Deal.
So let's talk a little bit about recruiting. So I know you said like being a faith-based institution and things like that. I usually like to ask where you're finding your athletes and what you look for in an athlete. So I guess the first part you can answer is where you're looking for athletes, where you're finding them. But in the second part of that, whenever you go to like what you're looking for in an athlete, is religion and or faith something that you bring up? I'm assuming it is, but like, is that a huge deal when it comes to the actual recruiting of them, or is it just them being open? I mean, how do you use faith or maybe what they can expect going to Grace in the recruiting side of things to make sure that they would be a good fit?
That's a great question. Well, first, recruiting, just, we're in Indiana, so regional is big for us. I came into this, one thing I wanted to do was I didn't want a kid in our backyard getting out of here without an opportunity to get him to Grace. Like, that was big for me. You hear all the time, you want the best players in Indiana to make sure they go to Indiana, or you want the best players in Ohio, like they got to go to Ohio State. We can't lose them, right? Well, that was the same thing for us. Is if we have a good kid within a 45-minute radius, the Crossroads League, our league is all Indiana based except one Michigan and one Ohio, and I just kept saying, like, I don't want that kid who's 30 minutes away from me getting out of here without a fight. So I really, really took pride in recruiting local kids. And again, there's enough talent around here where we had some pick of, there's a lot of good players in the Fort Wayne, Indianapolis, the region area up by Chicago that we can bring in. And then when it comes to fit, I think, obviously the spiritual side of things, like, yes, we're a faith-based school, and I don't hide that. I think the worst thing you can do is to present a message to a kid and then have them show up in August and go, man, this is nothing like Coach said it was going to be. I think that's very dangerous, and that's anything. That's, promising playing time. That's, not even talking about something that's the school's going to do, like chapel, right? If you go up and you never talked about chapel, and they show up and they're going 3 times a week and praying in class, and they're like, this is foreign to me. Like, we never. Right. So we try to really share, this is who we are. This is what we're about. Both basketball, but faith, anything, like no magic tricks. That way, when they get here, they know, like, okay, Coach Moore was telling the truth. This is what they believe. This is who they are. There's no surprises. As far as just recruiting, I think it's probably more fit. And I mean by fit is not all of my kids, in fact, are believers. In fact, I'm pretty positive, in the last couple of years, we've had 1 or 2 that are not bought in or fully have accepted Christ into their heart. However, even though that could be challenging, what I always tell them is, as long as you're not against it, like, that's okay, because I want to pour into these guys, right? And I want to make sure that when they get here, all I'm doing is presenting an opportunity, our guys, our coaches, our players, so that when they get out of here, or even before, man, it's turning, right? Their heart's turning, their mind's turning. That one day, hopefully, that will happen. But if you're against it, right, I tell the kids, like, we're going to have chapel 3 days a week. Like, your professor is going to pray for you. Like, it's going to be embedded in our program. If you're against that, it's not going to work. Like, so don't waste your time. We shouldn't waste our time. Like, this is not the place for you. However, if you're open to that, again, you do not have to be a scholar. Heck, there's some kids on my team that have way better knowledge of the Bible than I do. And there's kids on my team that are very new to this, and that's okay. From everywhere in between, and that's my job, I think, as a head coach and kind of a mentor and a leader for them. Is, again, let's meet them where they're at, and if they're here, let's get them to here. If they're up here, let's keep them going, right? And so the recruiting piece is very much, as far as stylistically and personnel style, we're really big. I recruit very big, versatile players. I think last year we were 6'5", 6'7", 6'7", 6'8", 6'10", which is really big for the NAIA. This year we're not as tall. We lost some size, but again, that's what we are. We got a point guard coming in next year as a freshman who's almost 6'6". So I like big. I like length. Like athleticism. I like being able to think the game. In Indiana, if you can't shoot, pass, or dribble, it's hard to be successful. So obviously the skill set's important. But then the biggest thing, and I always share this with guys. I've been doing this for 6 years. We've had the National Player of the Year last year, right? The best player in small college basketball who averaged 17 points a game. The way we play, I want to lead the country in assists. I'd love to lead the country in field goal percentage if we can. And I'd love to put more guys in double figures than any other team in the country. One of my favorite stats, and again, we don't talk too much about statistical and us and this, but in completing the 5 years, in our 5 years, we've had 9 1,000-point scorers in 5 years.
9 1,000-point scorers?
9 1,000. 9.
Wow.
And I can tell you this for fact because I did the research. That's 3 more than second most in all college basketball at any level. Any level. Yeah. So just the idea of, like, hey, when you come play for us, it's not about one guy. It's not about 2 guys. It's not about Coach Moore. It's about this whole thing where we're going to win a lot of games. One night it's going to be your night. The next night it could be his night. The next night it could be his night. But there comes a sense of enjoyment when you can let go a little bit of yourself and get involved in something that's more important than just you. You actually find yourself, maybe producing a little bit less stats, but man, having more fun and feeling less pressure to do so.
Right.
You know, if we're sitting there, and last year, you know, we had the National Player of the Year, Elijah Malone, who, if I'm going to E and I'm telling him like, hey, dude, like every night you got to be a 22-12 guy, or otherwise we don't have a chance. Man,
That's a lot
they're
of
20
pressure.
years old. Yeah, it's pressure. And the best thing is, E did not have 36 great games. You know, like he probably had 22 great games, and he probably had 4 or 5 really good games, but he also had 4 or 5 games where he was just okay or not really good. And the good news is Ian Scott, Bryson Graber, Carter Stoltzfus, Brett Sikafus, Gage, like those guys, other guys,
Picked him up.
they picked him up. Jake Wadding
Yep.
picked him up. The Twins picked him up. So I think that's very big in who we are culturally. And that's not for everybody. And I can't say never, but I would be shocked if we ever coached a guy who averaged 20 points plus per game on our basketball team, just the way we play.
No, being a team, and obviously the fun is the most important thing, because you know there is a lot of pressure, and you know when you get to the big lights, or you get to the tournament, or you get the opportunity to play in a conference title or a national title, whatever the case is, right? Like you have to have, if they've never been in that type of spotlight, you don't know. Like you can't expect a guy who's 22-12, like you said, who may has never been there to do that, right? If he does, then great. But you got to have guys who can go 10-4 or have 2 or 3 guys who are doing that, as well as a good bench or whatever the case is, to pick up your team. So I love that you are a team oriented coach first, and I love that you guys have 9 1,000-point scores. That's impressive, especially in such a short time. So that kind of goes to show what you guys have there and what you're building there and what your future is going to be.
Yeah, and we just picked up another one, right? We had number 10 this year, so we added another one to the list. But yeah, I go back. I got to be careful because I think you know this. Just as a coach yourself, look, there's no right, wrong way to do things. It's the way we do things, and
Yep.
I think that's the point. Is the best coaches that I know have an identity, and they stick to their identity. I think where we're in trouble is, I've told my assistants this, guys, there's only 3 people who can screw this thing up, and it's the 3 of us. We're the only 3 that can screw this up, because we control essentially who we bring in that locker room. And yes, we'll miss on guys, or yes, certain guys won't maybe turn out to be as good. But as far as like how we do things and the way that locker room is formed, only the 3 of us can really hinder that. And we take a lot of pride in like, hey, this is a big deal. A lot's in our hands. So trying to stick to what your beliefs and foundation are, that's why that's so important.
Absolutely. And that's perfect segue into, you know, I had one more recruiting question, but I think I'm going to completely skip that. And I'm just going to go into, you know, obviously you found success there with these scores, and it sounds like you have guys, because you're not scoring 1,000 points in one season, right? That's obviously them sticking around and being a part of your culture and your program. So my question for you is how do you build a culture based off of mindset and buy-in?
Well, it helps if you win. Let's be honest. Like, winning solves a lot of problems. So I think I was very fortunate to take over a program that the bones were already laid down. Coach K was phenomenal at that, of just like, this was his program. I was just trying to now take it to another level. And I was a lot younger. You know, he was 72 when he retired, and you know, it was just seeing eyes in 2020 and 2019 is just a different view on things. But you know, when you talk about it and you talk about the us over me mentality, it does help if you have something to back that up. And obviously, recruiting competitors and recruiting kids, that's another thing we didn't talk about, is I like to recruit kids who win. Like, because there's something about guys who win a lot, who, man, when they lose, they do something about it.
Yep.
And so even our 2025 class we have coming in, I saw one of our guys just posted, we got 6 recruits coming in right now, and they did all of their records currently. And right now their win percentage is like nearly 80% of all our recruits total. I'm like, man, like if we get kids who win, like we're off to a good start, because winning matters, right?
Absolutely.
So Yeah, it's something that, again, there's no perfect way, but it is our way. And I think that if we continue to value those things, I think the wins come with that, right? Not every season you're going to go 34-2 and be the number one ranked team in the country. It's not going to happen. But I think more often than not, you're going to see your kids be really successful. And once you are successful, there's more buy-in, and now that you're winning, more people want to be a part of it, and it just, again, it's kind of a roller coaster, right? It all kind of feeds off each other.
Absolutely. So then how do you build a successful program on the level of wins, and then how do you sustain that over time? Rich, I know it kind of goes back a little bit to recruiting the right guys, right? But you also have to have guys who want to stay there for 2, 3, 4, possibly 5 years. And then bring in people who are transfers or whatever, I'm assuming, to kind of fill in holes as needed. But in general, like, how do you build that program and how do you sustain it? Going 34-2 last year, how do you not drop to, was that 17-17 or whatever that number is, in a year? How do you keep it going?
I'll let you know when we get there. I don't know yet. I think we still we could be pretty crappy next year. Who knows? But I think it's trusting more what you do and having buy-in. One thing I think that favors that is, in my 6 years doing this, in a transfer world, and I can say this, we've had a couple kids. Obviously, we've had some kids that maybe he's got dismissed because of even academic reasons, or maybe some stuff that they did where they were dismissed from the team, or kids maybe came to play, but they didn't want to keep playing basketball. Maybe they just wanted to stay at Grace. But in all my 6 years, we've actually really only had one basketball player who's transferred, and really the only reason he wanted to transfer is because and I didn't blame him. His parents got a new job. They ended up moving to the state. He was really, really close to his family, and he wanted to be closer to his family. And so I think there's a big deal in that, where in a time today of like people are leaving and just going different places, like,
Absolutely.
heck, a college basketball player can play 4 different schools in 4 years.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of today. We just don't have a lot of that. And what's really evident of a healthy program is having your kids at the end of the bench who don't play a lot, who want to stay and be a part of it. I think that's the biggest thing. And I don't have a reason for why that is. I just know that, okay, we're doing something right where those kids want to stay and be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have it nailed down on why that is, but like, again, I want to make sure that, whether you're 15 on the depth chart or you're number 1, like, there's reasons other than just hoops that are keeping you a part of this program. And that's where I think that has a big thing to do with the success, is the continuity of players in your program. Yeah,
For sure. So actually, let me ask this. What kind of tips or advice do you have for new or struggling coaches?
I go back. I give the advice I'd give to that my coach gave to me. I think those two things is like, I think the number one thing, because there are a lot of coaches. Not every coach played, and I think that's okay.
Absolutely.
I think if you have a knowledge of the game, there's some heck, really the best coaches tend to be the guys that weren't great players or were managers. Like, they think the game differently. Like, so my first thing would be, obviously you got to find a place, whether it's high school or college. You got to find a place where you can yourself believe in, right? If you don't believe in what the school stands for, like, you're always going to be hindered a little bit, because you're not going to be able to be fully you. And if you're not fully you, you're never going to be as successful as you can be. Absolutely. But just like my coach said, whatever you do, whatever you try to build, you really do need to do it your way. And you need to kind of wipe out all the noise and all the junk and say, okay, this is what I want it to look like. Now build that. No excuses. And if it doesn't work, like, at least it didn't work your way, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
It not because you couldn't do it this way or you were told to do it this way. Like, we're one of the few professions, case in that, 2 hours every Wednesday and Saturday, there are 2,000 coaches in the stands watching us play, telling essentially, what my kids are doing right and wrong, and telling me what I'm doing right and wrong. Right.
Yep.
I said something the other day, like, you don't see me going to the dentist and sitting in a side chair going, hey, you missed that
absolutely.
cavity right there.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you got to scrape that back there, boss. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not going to the insurance company and sitting in and letting him know the good choices and bad choices he made, or calling him an idiot. Right. It's just
Right.
so it's a tough profession in a lot of
I like that.
ways, but you have to, one, understand that, like,
Yep.
it's part of the job. You signed up for it. And two, be unapologetically you. Right. If you're unapologetically you and you have the ability and the means to be successful, you're going to be successful. If you're a puppet in a puppet show, it's just a matter of time and you're going to be gone. Right.
Absolutely.
So, and then you can't find joy in doing it. I think that's the other thing I would say. Find joy in what you're doing, because I know a lot of guys. I love winning games. I do. I'm competitive. I want to kick your teeth in, but I'm telling you right now, it is not. I refuse to let winning and losing games dictate how I am as a father, and how I am as a husband, and how I am as a brother, and how I live my day to day. I may be grumpier. I may sleep less on a night.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to let that control who I am and what I'm about. It is my profession, and it's my vehicle to be able to do things that I really want to do, which is lead young men.
Absolutely.
And
I love that.
so that's what I would say. That'd be my advice for anyone getting into this. After the point, I'd say you're crazy. But once you realize you're crazy, then I'd go there.
Be right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love that. Just, you're crazy, but hey, you're doing it for the right reasons, hopefully, and there's going to be some positive outlook on the end of it. So down to my final question, at least on the philosophy side of things. And if you guys are still listening to this, make sure you guys HTB hit that bell if you're on YouTube. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys are listening to this, wherever you're listening to it, make sure you guys leave a review, hit those stars, say what you got to say, but say it with your chest, because we want to hear it. So, Coach, why do you coach? What is your coach's why?
Yeah, my why. I'm going to show you my why. Actually, I can show you. It's better than me actually telling you.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can flip this. Well, I can just do it manually here. So my why is all those boys sitting up on my wall. Those are my trophies, right? And so we've been very fortunate, Kaysen. We've won a lot of games, and we've got some, coach of the year stuff and this and that. But, like, my trophies are the boys that get to hang up on that wall. And every year at the end of the season, it's a tough time, but it's an exciting time where I get an 8x10, and I go through and I pick what I think is the best picture that represents who that person was in their personality. And man, I write a little note on the back of it before I put it in the frame, because I know one day I'm going to be old and I'm going to forget some things, and I can't wait to go through those and read what I wrote about those kids. But those boys that go up on my wall, it's the only reason why I am in this profession today. I like basketball a ton. Like, I like it a ton, but it's not who I am. It's not like I don't live and breathe it.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not a junkie, and good, bad, or indifferent. Some people are, some people aren't. But I love those boys. And this, like I said, this is the vehicle that I get to drive that lets me do that. And so, very simply stated, that's my why.
Damn, I like that a lot, man. You're the first person to show me some trophies because of it. So I appreciate that, man. That was awesome. I think I love I love the idea that you have a vehicle that you drive, and and I think that's kind of like, I guess right before you were talking about how you're getting into it for the right reasons. Hopefully we all have our mission that we're trying to get to, whether it's hopefully not just for winning and losing, but obviously we all know we want to, but obviously building good people. And obviously there's so much more behind it than the X's and O's to get to that point where people want to call you and they're excited for you 10 years down the road. But regardless of that, I guess what I'm trying to get at is the vehicle that we have is coaching, and we're coaching people to be good people. And I guess at the end of the day, you get to hang up some memorabilia of some kids who made an impact, not that you made impacts for, which I know you don't have every athlete up there that you have coached, but those kids made an impact on you enough to where that's what keeps you going, right? It could be one kid from a year, it could be 5 kids from a year, but regardless, you're going because you want to continue to drive kids and put them in the point them in the right direction, as basketball being the foundation that brings you guys together. So I love it. Absolutely love that. Of course. So I have one final question for you. We got 2 minutes left, so we might be able to drill it in. My final question, just to throw in there, just for debate, is what state produces the best high school basketball?
That's not even a hard question.
Should be a hard question. Okay, all right.
Goodness.
All right.
It's not even a hard question.
I know, it's going to be Indiana. I know.
Your viewers, you're going to get a 92% approval on that answer just because they know.
Okay.
But there's good basketball a lot of different places, but I'm telling you, like, it's just it means a lot here in Indiana. It just means a lot, and you see that with the size of the facilities, and like, football is big, but look, I've been to Texas, I've been to Ohio, I've been to Florida. Football is a bigger deal in those places. Here, Indiana reigns supreme, and I don't see it being any different anytime soon, man. It's pretty awesome to be a part of.
Hey, I respect it. I just say it off of debate. There's some other coaches who say some other stuff. So if you guys are listening this far, Coach, hey,
they're great coaches. They're great coaches. They're just wrong.
Hey, I'll make sure his social media is in the bio and stuff below, so you guys can.
Can't wait for those messages to pour in.
Yeah, exactly right. No, but I really appreciate you jumping on today, man. I really do. I thank you so much for taking the time today. I will hold you to that phone call. We'll have that phone call one of these days. And with you guys listening to me and listening to us, I can't appreciate you guys anymore. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. But with that being said, we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
See you guys.